This is Live with Miami's Community News, and I'm Michael. Our special guest today is Dr. Jacqueline Del Rosario.
There you go. You say it like a relative.
We got it right.
You did.
And first, thanks for being here.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
And you are stunning, all right?
Oh, thank you.
And I know people tell you that all the time, but I'm just telling you are stunning, all right?
Thank you.
So years ago, you started an organization called Recapturing the Vision. Tell us about that, and what was your driving force with that?
So Recapturing the Vision is an organization that has been Miami-based for about 30 years. We're celebrating, as a matter of fact, our 30th year. And it's an organization that believes in supporting children and families. So we want to make sure that people capture their potential and that they live it and fulfill it. And potential is potential unless it's developed. And so that's what we do. So we work in Dade County Public Schools, Broward County. We've been in Arkansas schools, Syracuse City schools. I'm trying to think, Orlando, New Orleans. And so we're all over the place. Hopefully we'll be in Atlanta very soon.
So one of the things that we see frequently, and I'm going to use the term in this wide range, the spectrum of people, all right? And I mean that literally and figuratively. We have people from this whole range. It's people that, and I liken it to the light that I have on the outside of my house. I look at it and it's 30 watts and I condemn it all the time. I say, why are you only 30 watt? He says, because I'm a 30 watt bulb, all right? I said, and I say to myself, well, if you want a 100 watt bulb, go to a different one. So how do you, when you're looking for people for these young people to help them develop their potential, how do you reach them and how do you find the ones that need a little bit more help?
So we have actually a profile. Students can self-refer, parents can refer their kids into the program, but mostly the school staff are very, very instrumental in deciding who would really benefit. So we've served everyone from very, very affluent children in magnet schools to kids that are really, really in need and lack some of the assets. And so the one common denominator is it doesn't matter your entry point, kids still excel. They could be excelling in their ability to communicate, their ability to know themselves, manage their emotions, and just tap into who they really are.
So you have your PhD. Can I call you doctor? Is that okay?
Absolutely, you can. It took me a lot of work to get that.
So frequently what happens to all of us in this field, we honor the kids that are getting, they got the straight A's and perfect attendance and they're the athlete of the year. But yet the one that's marginal, the one that's right on the edge, all right, they can go either direction. How is it that we wind up so often ignoring them and then they just go their own way? But yet the people that are affluent, that can go to these schools and can get the tutors, all right, we pat them on the back a little bit more. So what does your organization do to identify some of those kids and to be able to help them?
Well, I'm going to start by saying this. I think that what happens, Michael, is that we just care about ourselves and we don't realize that we're all connected. So we're only as good as our weakest link. And so when I started to understand that, I really began to understand the value in sowing into the lives of those that are the underdogs and the underserved. Really, really important. So we do it by finding out your needs assessment. What is it that particular communities need? What is it that are the evidence-based practices that help to move the needle for children and families? And that's where we drill down.
So we know that the public schools have been going through this major shift. It seems though they were, in some places, they were very busy. And then over the last 5 years, they were like empty, right?
Yeah,
I know
Sunset
High at one point had 4,700 students. I think last go around they had 1,500.
Yeah.
Right? And it's like, what happened to all these kids? They went to other places.
They did.
So how do you stay on top of that and make sure that you're current and that the kids that are going to these schools get that attention they need? And so I get the question is, how do you communicate with the teachers so they can identify some of these kids?
Well, I think that everybody understands what it is that we're offering. So that's shared. And then who would benefit from it? And so that's how you develop your list of the needs. But I have to agree with you. Schools are shrinking. But as the enrollment is going down, guess what? It's also going down. Sometimes it's the quality of the teachers. It's the resources. There's so many resources in some of the charter schools that we're losing because those students that aren't there aren't generating the annual budget that's necessary to support a lot.
Sometimes if we go to a party or at some event and it's the classroom, if you will, is full, we feel good. And if you go to the same event, and there are only 10 people in it, you go, what's wrong? Why am I here? Is that happening in the school system?
I think so. And for the reasons that I just shared, you need to generate enough of a budget to really give robust services. So if you don't have the seats and the chairs, you lack that budget.
So what can we do in our positions to make sure that the powers to be fund things correctly?
Well, for me, one of the things I'm working on is policy change. I think that we really need to get back to some of the things that ensures that we create healthy, whole children. It's got to be about more than reading, writing, and arithmetic. You got to treat the whole child. And I remember when I was in school, maybe you remember, you had home ec. Home ec taught you about life. So not only you learning reading, writing, and arithmetic, but you learned how to cook, how to sew, how to balance a checkbook, how to set a budget. You learned life lessons, right? And so I think that's a very missing element. Kids need to learn how to cope with their emotions. They need to know what they are. They need to understand the who am I question. How do I drill down to get the answers? How do we make people whole so that they can learn to live life well?
One of the great things that I did is I looked to my ancestors, and boy, oh boy, that filled it in so nicely. Where I met a long lost relative, and I realized he was named after a grandfather of mine.
Okay.
And so I showed him his birth certificate, and I said, "This is who you were named after." Right? He was very, very much pleased. One of our friends is Dr. Tina Carroll Scott. She runs the South Miami Children's Center, a few blocks from here. She's a pediatrician, and she left her very lucrative practice on Bal Harbor 17 years ago. She came to South Miami to serve the people that needed it the most. And she taught me about, Michael, it's not about just the patient. It's about the family. And she makes reference to the families. This is my family, right? Anybody wants to make any donations, you know where to do it, South Miami Children's Center. And when there was recently, one of her families was evicted. Two of they were twins, girls. One had been accepted at FIU in their engineering department, another one in a similar thing. She got them into a hotel. She went there and sat with them with their stuff out on the street, right? And it's when we find people like that, right, that are willing to help them. They eventually got into a house, and we realized so critical, because that right at that point, the girls wanted to drop out.
She changed generations by doing that one act. So it's not just the parent that she got the housing for, but the children that were looking on. This, I'm sure, shifted the trajectory for their life.
Yes.
So again, it goes back to, we become that joint which so richly supplies. We have to recognize that our purpose on life is not just to eat, drink, and be merry, but also to help our brother man. And we got to think about the greater good. So I think that's what she's doing.
Where did you get that inspiration?
I think my parents. I remember when I grew up, my parents always had foreign exchange students in our home that would come and live. They would come and work and live for a time. So my mother taught me about the beauty of people, how they're individual and different but beautiful. So we had German people, we had Norwegian people, we had Spanish people, we had everybody like coming through our doors. And my mom would open her home up, and we would share our food and our culture. They would share theirs. And so I learned that at a very, very young age. When I went to University of Miami, they called me Miss International. Why? Because I loved all people. And I think that love of all people and the feeling that I'm not better than anybody, I'm just different, but I'm interested in what makes us different, but also what makes us alike.
So what age did you recognize that about your parents, that they were doing that?
I think I realized it right away, because none of our neighbors had people, speaking foreign languages, in their homes. So I recognized it very early on, but I say that it is the foundation for me in terms of my perspective on mankind. I think it was definitely given by my mom. Plus, my mom was a social worker. When she finally did get to work, she was a stay-home mom most of my life.
It was written.
But then she went to school, got her degree, went back, got her master's, then became a licensed clinical. And so she worked with Jackson for like 35 years.
What years were that? Was that?
Well, she retired. Oh my God, you're going to put me on the spot now.
More or less.
I want to tell you it was around 2006, 2005 that she retired. And that made 35 years.
So you really didn't have much of a choice. It was a done deal.
Yeah. Well, same thing with my kids. So my mom would take us when she would go into impoverished communities and teach about health issues and things like that. We were right there. So I did the same thing with my kids, because I wanted them to understand you're privileged. You have a lot. Don't ever forget that or take that for granted. Remember to always look back to reach to the people that don't have. Feel for them what it must be like and understand, as best as you can what it might be to walk in their shoes. I think it breeds gratitude. It breeds a sense of presence, that you're present in front of whomever you're in front of. But more than that, that they understand that their life has to have a measure of giving back at all times.
I used to be a registered nurse, went to Jackson,
Really?
worked there for a while. And then I did home health care for a short period of time before joining the family business. And I went into some homes that were pretty rough. But I started to understand it, that everybody didn't look like me and didn't have the things that we have.
Yeah.
And that it's our responsibility to lift them and to help them and to take them out of the shadows, because when we can do that, the world is a better place. And my compliments to CHI during the pandemic, when they announced they were taking the bus van to the people that couldn't drive, they were afraid of getting the COVID shots. When I saw what they were doing and reaching out, really inspired me to do a better job here. And Colonel Hadley, my hat's off to him and to their team to be able to do that. And the more we understand that, the better job that we can do. So my question to you is, what's on the landscape for you in the next 5 years as far as helping people?
Oh, I would love to answer that. I want to create legacy, and I want to do something that I know is sustainable. So about almost 2 years ago, I started meeting with Mayor Levine Cava, different school board officials, leaders, community leaders, and political leaders all around. What communities can we create an ecosystem in? An ecosystem really ensures, to me, sustainability. And so we came up with a project that we're now working on in Homestead, Global Leaders Village. We're going to be building an early childhood learning facility, a K-8 center, a community hub. So it has technology, but it's a community center for activities for kids and for families, after school programs, summer camps, and things like that. But also the ability for them to learn and stay up to par on trainings on different things that other community entities can offer, but also technology. The advent of technologies is moving so quickly, and these communities can get left behind. But then there's also Workforce Development Center, and there's about 175 unit affordable housing project. And so we're putting that together now, and I just heard today that we're still moving forward. So we're in that process of building that center out. That's what I want to see happen. The next thing is I want to continue to take what we're doing to different cities and different school districts. So we've covered, like I mentioned, about 7 or 8 different cities. I want to continue to expand that. I think there's more areas where our scalable model can be replicated and more families and more children impacted.
So let's talk about where your parents were when they were much younger. So tell us about that and how you looked at it and what it's caused you to do.
Well, my parents were both migrant workers. So I think
Would you say that one more time?
My parents were migrant workers. So migrant workers were people that were, you would go with the crops. So maybe in the summers you would be in Miami picking whatever the vegetation was. And then maybe you would be up north doing another crop during a different part of the year. So my mother was she's an original alumni of Mays. Mays used to be a high school back in the day. So she met my father, I believe, at the age of 16 or 17. She was graduating. She gets married, has my brother, and I'm the second born. So my father, who was uneducated, he had to start working for his family when he was, I believe, maybe 12 or 13 years old. His mother died when he was very young. My father taught himself to be a laborer, then taught himself to be a mason. And the guy that he worked for, the Pelly family, as a matter of fact, he still called my father the N-word, but he loved my dad. And he said, "You're different." He says, "You're amazing." He fought in the Gables for over a year and something. My father became the first Black to be actually registered, given license as a contractor. So my father built a lot of these buildings that we're looking at. Maybe some of them.
Approximately what year was that? Approximately.
Oh, now, Michael.
What decade was it?
Well, my dad now passed away 3 years ago, but so I was young. I remember when this gentleman used to take him into the Gables And I remember every meeting, he was like, we're not going to give up, Joe. We're going to go back again. And so, sure, it took about a year, a little over a year, and they finally admitted my father.
So your mother was a migrant worker, your father also?
Yeah, and then he started laboring. So a laborer is a person that helps on a construction site, mixing the cement and doing all of that.
For the people that don't know what a migrant worker is, try to describe what that means.
Oh, I thought I did. It means people
let's hear it
that
again.
travel and they pick
Bending
crops.
over all day long, picking up stuff off the ground or off a tree.
Back-breaking labor in the sun and in the harsh conditions. Rain, it didn't matter. You have to be out there.
And then they raised the daughter, became a PhD that cares.
Well, so after my father was admitted into the union, I think that people don't understand this. You're able to make a certain wage, but there's a glass ceiling. You can only make so much. Once he became licensed, he was able to earn like 4 or 5 times that. So I grew up poor, but then around that time, I must have been around 10 or so that my dad was admitted into the union. My family became very lucrative. Affluent. So I went from living in the back room of someone's home to then finally my parents earned the ability to buy their first home, to then my father's business becoming, licensed. And then he became very, very
When did you realize that you could make it?
I always knew that I could make it, even though, so I integrated our first elementary school, South Miami Heights Elementary. I was 6 years old, and I remember that when I integrated that elementary school, we were walking towards the building. We saw the police cars. We thought they were welcoming us, but it was really for our own protection. Because,
Your son must be going, what?
I see a bottle fly over my head and different things, and the closer we get, you hear the jeering. So I learned that day that there was a difference in race. I didn't know that before. Really, there's only one race. It's the human race, but in color. And, but still, even though I went through that and had to be under guard for like the first couple years, imagine you're 6 years old. You're just finding out, oh, I'm a different color. I don't think kids recognize that. But my parents always taught me, Jackie, you can be whatever you want. And they taught me the value of education. They taught me very, very specific principles that I think that I live by today and that I've passed down to my children.
Even though your father at that point was uneducated and your mother was on her journey.
Yeah. So at that point, my mom still wasn't working yet. My mom she had just started to volunteer. She was a stay-home mom up until I was maybe like 11.
Tell us what faith, where you are with faith and how that helps you.
Faith is really, really important to me. So just for people to understand, I'm definitely Judeo-Christian, but I also have a very, very loving rabbi who visits me, prayed over my new home. I love him very much, but my faith plays a very big role. I think it's the reason why society should be better if we really believed and had faith to believe that there's something greater than ourselves, and that this greater thing that we can answer to can keep us accountable to how we treat one another, how we live our lives and the decisions that we make. Yeah, so faith is really key.
So when you walk through your daily lives, do you ever say, how did this happen to me? And what did I do to deserve this?
No, I've never asked that question. That's never occurred to me. I know that everything that I have acquired, I think is by not only the grace, the goodness of God. I'm not going to say just grace. I'd say the goodness of God, but it's also by some measured hard work. Think about it. So our generations don't have generational wealth. That's the typical thing. So when you talk about resources, everything that I've built, I had to build from the ground up. I couldn't call so-and-so because they had a law degree and they could read this contract for me. I had to figure out how I'm going to pay an attorney to review my contract, because we don't have, maybe that sort of that sort of grouping in our family members or in our friends. You just might not have it. So
when I was growing up and the Cubans first started coming over to Miami, I'd say to my father, how is it like 3 years after these people come over, it looks like they're owning banks? And he said to me, son, when people are immigrants and they come here, they work harder. And the people that come here, they're coming here for a better way. And so I know that is in a lot of us. And I tried to do that because at that point I heard silver spoon. I didn't know what that meant. I don't know if he was making reference to me, right? But my brother and I recognize that we have to work hard every day to even this playing field and to be able to use the assets we have to help tell stories about people and about what they're doing. So tell us a little bit more about recapturing the vision.
So recapturing the vision is this wonderful mixture of, I think, what made me. So my parents taught me that I was somebody. They told me that there was something special about me. So I noticed that I never had a cannot attitude. As a matter of fact, can't isn't even in one of my dictionaries. It's just doesn't exist to me. But when I was in schools, I got the opportunity to be in a special position where I was touring schools, and I got to meet with principals. I got to meet with teachers. I got to go to the homes, as you shared, and meet with the families. And I'm going to be honest, some of those homes, I said to myself, if I had to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and take my kids on 2 different bus rides to get to their different daycares or schools, then get back on a bus to get myself to my job at 8:30, I don't know that I would have the gusto to do all of that day in and day out. But it shaped me, because what I noticed was these people don't have, I mean, some of the basics to make it, but yet they're there in the fight. Then I noticed also that some of their children, though, did not have the same ideals that I had, that I could do whatever I wanted to do. I could be whom I wanted to become. So I thought about it. Well, what's the difference? And I thought the difference was the way that I was brought up. So how do I take those principles and shape them into a curricula or curriculum, because at that time it was just one, and build a program that's going to ensure that these kids become. And so that's basically what I set out doing. So in conjunction with Nova Southeastern, I wrote the first curriculum, and then we started to test it. The school board commissioned a research project, which basically was data driven, to look at what are these kids like first semester pre-program compared to first semester after the program. And it went so well. I mean, the improvement rate was just through the roof. So then we did second semester, and we looked at the same comparison. It was amazing. Academia increases. So even if you stay the same, if you're a B average and you stay a B, that's actually an increase, because academia becomes more difficult each year. But what we saw was attendance, behavior, academic performance improved, self-esteem surveys. We use a nationally validated tool. And so kids were saying, but also their tests and outcomes were showing that they were actualizing success.
And so often, sometimes all we need is a pat on the back. Yes, you can do this. You can do it. You have the ability to do that. So you're good at that.
Well, I think in underserved communities, you need a little bit more than just you can do it. You need to give the skill building that's necessary on the know-how. Things that maybe if you had a silver spoon, you observe and you gain through osmosis, because all of these principles were in operation all around you. But if I come from nothing, what am I seeing? Nothing.
So what do you wish for you? You have one child, two?
I have 2 sons.
2 sons. What do you wish for them?
Well, that's a really good question. I think my sons might not have to build the way that we had to build, the way that my husband and we had to build from scratch. I think that they all have now resources and assets to build from. So I think that the greatest thing for me would be that they build generational wealth. It has to be something where when I'm gone, I'm able to leave something for them. When they're gone, they're able to leave something for their children. So if their children want to start a business, they have funds and an account set aside for them in a trust or whatever, they can go and withdraw and make that investment into their future.
Well, they certainly do have a good role model. I hope at least one of them are listening. All right. We have just a minute left. And I know that there have been plenty of people that have helped you along your way. And this is a great opportunity if you'd like to thank them, whether they're with us or they passed. If you look into this blue camera, she's going to put the camera right on you. And this is your opportunity to thank them.
I'm trying to remember her last name now. She was the head of community policing, Jeannie. I can't remember her last name. She believed in me after I had invested all of my own funds for the first 3 years into Recapturing the Vision. And I remember when I asked her for funding, she says, I'm not going to be able to do that, but this partnership that you want to do to rebuild strong bonds between the police and underserved communities, I'm really willing to listen to that. And so when I went to meet her, she asked me for my book. the curriculum, and I let her look at it, and she looked at it and she said, "This is amazing. I've never seen anything so comprehensive." She says, "I'm going to help you." She was right. Within 30 days, I had $250,000, and I was able to now work with that. And then Nelson Perez at Dade County Public Schools said, okay, because those monies were only for direct services to the clients, we couldn't use it for salaries. I remember I called him on the phone and I said to him, "Listen, this is who I am. This is what I'm doing. I received these funds, but I can't use them for salaries. I've been working for free, but I can't expect a staff to do so." He said, not to worry. What school is near you? He put the monies in a pact, and I was able to pay me and my support staff for that year. So those are two people that I really would love to thank because they made a difference. They moved the needle for me and for Recapturing the Vision.
Wonderful. Doctor, thank you so much. You're an inspiration.
No, thank you. You and your brother, your father.
Yeah,
what an inspiration.
We had a good time with that. We're going to look to the red camera right up here. Folks, thanks for joining us. Remember, do something for somebody today. Have a great day. See you. Bye.